Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're taking a deep dive into the fascinating and sometimes, maddening world of desire and unavailability.
We've pulled together insights from quite a range of fields, actually. Evolutionary psychology, some ancient spiritual texts, modern marketing strategies.
And even the latest research on social media, which really amplifies this stuff.
Exactly.
Our mission today is to unpack why. Why our brains seem hardwired to crave what's scarce, why off-limits can be so incredibly alluring, and maybe most interestingly, what happens when we actually get everything we thought we wanted.
Yeah, that twist is quite something.
Get ready, because you might uncover some real aha moments about your own desires today. So, let's start right there with that opening thought. Why are we so incredibly drawn to the off-limits? Think about those stories you hear, or maybe experiences you've had yourself, where someone is relentlessly chasing, say, an emotionally unavailable partner.
Or someone who's just constantly busy, always canceling plans.
Right. Or even someone who just feels like they're in a completely out-of-reach social circle. There's this particular kind of energy around those pursuits, isn't there? Almost a desperate excitement.
Mm-hmm. A certain charge.
Yeah, exactly. I'm thinking about, those letters referenced in that popular relationship book. He's just not that into you.
Yeah.
Women would write in with such enthusiasm, it seemed, about boyfriends who were just way too busy to call back. Like this filmmaker whose perceived importance seemed almost inversely proportional to his actual availability.
The less available he was, the more important he seemed.
Totally. Or that intriguing boyfriend whose secrecy was somehow mistaken for depth. He seemed more desirable because he was a mystery, a puzzle to solve.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Are we just rationalizing these situations, trying to make sense of something that feels, well, kind of illogical?
Or is something else deeper at play? Something pulling the strings inside us?
Well, it's certainly not about being pathetic, as you sometimes hear people say. I mean, it really taps into a deeply ingrained psychological truth. As one source put it quite bluntly, there is something inescapably attractive about that which is inaccessible.
Inescapably attractive. That's strong.
It is. And this isn't just, anecdotal stuff from self-help books. Even dating advice columns, like on AskMen.com, they state it pretty directly. One piece basically said, women don't feel attraction for men that are pushover wuss bags. Women feel attraction for men who are a challenge. Now, that phrasing is maybe a bit much.
A little blunt, yeah.
But it points to a fundamental principle that explains a lot about human desire, not just in dating, but across the board. It suggests our wiring pushes us towards things that require effort.
Difficulty signals value, maybe?
That seems to be a key part of it.
Okay, so if being a challenge is so appealing, what's actually going on in our brains and our psychology when something becomes scarce or, forbidden? Why do we suddenly need it more? It feels almost primal, doesn't it? Like some instinct just takes over, overriding all the logic. Can you break down the mechanics of that for us?
Absolutely. And you're right. It feels primal because, well, it really is. There are powerful underlying mechanisms that explain this seemingly irrational behavior. Dr. Pauline Willan, a psychologist and author, she outlines 3 core reasons why we constantly want what we can't have, and they tie directly into how our brains perceive value and react to limits. The first one, she calls it heightened attention. When something is difficult to get, or it's explicitly forbidden, our attention just immediately intensifies. It's not really a conscious choice, it's more automatic.
Yeah.
An involuntary response that could escalate into, well, almost an obsession.
Like tunnel vision.
Exactly. Think about being on a really strict diet. Suddenly, that slice of chocolate cake, or maybe a greasy pizza, it becomes the most important, delicious thing imaginable,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Definitely.
Your mind just fixates on it, precisely because it's off limits. Dr. Willan kind of describes it like your internal brat takes over, convincing you it's an absolute necessity.
The internal brat. I like that.
And this intense focus makes the forbidden item seem disproportionately important. It creates this powerful loop of craving that can feel impossible to break.
No, that makes so much sense. It's like the moment something is labeled do not touch, it becomes the only thing you want to touch. It's almost magnetic.
Precisely. And that leads us straight into the second reason. Perceived scarcity. This is actually formalized in something called commodity theory. Basically, it states that when something is scarce or just in short supply, its perceived value drastically increases.
Okay, so rarity equals desirability.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And it's not just logical, like, oh, there aren't many, so they must be special. It's an inherent psychological bias. We implicitly assume that if something is rare, it must be more desirable. And crucially, if we see other people desiring it too, that just fuels our own wanting even more. It adds social proof to the scarcity.
Okay, like hype.
Exactly like hype. I mean, think back to the Cabbage Patch Panic of 1983. Do you remember that?
Vaguely. Weren't they those dolls with the weird faces?
That's them. Soft sculpted dolls each came with adoption papers. They became this huge, unexpected sensation. Demand just blew past expectations, leading to immediate shortages everywhere.
And people went nuts.
Completely nuts. The scarcity didn't dampen demand. It fueled it into a frenzy. People were literally scratching, pushing, shoving, even destroying stores just to get one. You had lines stretching for 14 hours. A secondary market exploded, with dolls selling for like $150, way above their original price.
$150 back then. Wow.
And get this, one postman from Kansas City apparently flew all the way to London just to get a doll for his daughter.
No way, just for a doll.
Just for a doll. That story perfectly demonstrates the incredible intensity, the irrationality that scarcity can generate.
Wow, that's why. So it's almost like if it's hard to get, our brain immediately just shortcuts to thinking it must be high quality or incredibly valuable, whether it actually is or not.
Exactly. It's a powerful heuristic cue for our brains, a mental shortcut. And this isn't some new phenomenon tied to consumerism. It has deep historical roots. The Roman poet Ovid observed it centuries ago. He wrote, "Easy things nobody wants, but what is forbidden is tempting."
Huh, same idea.
And Adam Smith, the economist, he noted a similar principle, saying that the merit of an object is greatly enhanced by its scarcity, or by the great labor which it requires to collect any considerable quantity of it.
Labor and scarcity adding value.
Precisely. This all aligns perfectly with commodity theory, which was proposed by Timothy Brock back in 1968. It basically says anything possessible and useful becomes more valued the more its availability is limited, whether that's true scarcity, high cost, rules against having it, or even just delays in getting it.
Okay, so heightened attention, perceived scarcity. What's the third piece?
The third one is fascinating. It's called psychological reactance.
Reactance.
Yeah, it's this really powerful human impulse. We fundamentally dislike being told we cannot have or do something.
Yeah.
It feels like a direct challenge to our sense of freedom and autonomy.
The rebellious streak.
Exactly. This reactance shows up both emotionally and behaviorally. Internally, it's that defiant little voice in your head saying, "Oh yeah, I can't have what I want. Just you try and stop me."
I know that voice.
What? We all do. And this emotional defiance often translates directly into rebellious actions. The classic example is teenagers being forbidden from dating certain people. Right?
Oh yeah, that often backfires spectacularly.
It almost always does. It leads them to pursue those very relationships with even greater intensity, partly as a form of rebellion against the restriction. Or think about something less dramatic, like a wet paint sign. That sign, explicitly telling you not to touch, often seems to just invite those unwanted fingerprints, doesn't it?
It really does. You suddenly feel this urge.
It's a primal urge to reestablish those threatened freedoms. We're pushing back against the limitation, sometimes by going directly towards the very thing that's been made off limits.
Okay, wow. That's a powerful trio. Heightened attention, perceived scarcity, and pure rebellion. Makes sense why unavailable things feel so compelling. Now, here's where it gets really, really interesting for so many of us. How do these deep-seated psychological principles, this craving for the inaccessible, play out in the, let's face it, incredibly complex world of our romantic lives? Why do we often seem to chase unavailable partners or even sometimes romanticize rejection? It seems so counterintuitive, yet it's a pattern so many people recognize.
It's a huge question and a really important one. To understand it, we really have to look at how human mating strategies are deeply rooted in evolutionary psychology. Our desires in a mate, they're incredibly powerful forces. They shape everything from that initial spark of attraction right through to long-term commitment. It's not just finding someone nice. There are these complex, often unconscious calculations going on.
Calculations? Like what?
Well, first, humans don't just have one mating strategy. We have a whole menu, you could say. There's long-term pair bonding, like marriage. But we also see short-term casual dating, serial relationships, even infidelity. These strategies often show important differences between the sexes, shaped by evolutionary pressures over millennia.
Okay, so different strategies are at play.
Right, and understanding these starts with looking at universal preferences. Research by David Buss. This was a massive study across 37 cultures, over 10,000 people.
Wow.
It revealed that people universally want partners who are kind, understanding, intelligent, dependable, emotionally stable, and healthy. Pretty standard stuff, right?
Sounds like a good foundation.
But here's the kicker. People worldwide also want mates they're in love with and who are in love with them. This completely dispelled that old social science belief that romantic love was just some Western invention. It seems to be a universal human desire in mating.
That's actually quite reassuring.
It is. But beyond these universals, there are also really robust sex differences predicted by evolutionary hypotheses that show up consistently. For instance, what women, more than men, universally desire are mates who can provide good economic resources. Along with that come traits like ambition, industriousness, and social status.
Why those specifically?
Because they're strongly linked to long-term resource acquisition. Historically, this was crucial for provisioning and protecting offspring.
Makes sense from a survival perspective. And for men?
Men, more than women, universally prioritize physical attractiveness and relative youth in a partner.
Okay, why that?
Because these are considered reliable cues to a woman's fertility. From an evolutionary standpoint, maximizing reproductive success was key, and these traits signal reproductive potential.
So there's this kind of practical, almost survival-driven component underpinning these fundamental desires, even if we don't consciously recognize it when we're, swiping on an app.
Exactly. We're not usually thinking, excellent resource potential or prime fertility cues. But these underlying preferences, shaped over eons, are still influencing our attractions.
Okay, so how does this tie back into the whole unavailability factor?
Yeah.
How does evolution explain chasing someone who seems hard to get?
That's an excellent question. It links into mate competition. The desires of one sex inevitably dictate the rules of competition for the other sex. This leads to specific tactics of attraction, trying to display what the other sex desires, and also tactics of derogation, which means putting down rivals.
Okay, so competing for mates.
Right. Both men and women use general attraction tactics like showing kindness, intelligence, good health, those universals we talked about.
Yeah.
But then you see sex-differentiated tactics. Women, for example, tend to invest significantly more in their appearance. Think about the beauty industry. Women spend roughly 9 times more on beauty products. This enhances physical attractiveness cues. For short-term mating contexts, women might also signal immediate sexual access. Men, on the other hand, tend to display status, ambition, and resources. For potential long-term partners, they emphasize their willingness to commit these resources. For short-term encounters, the focus might shift to displaying immediate resource availability, buying drinks, fancy dinners, that sort of thing.
Okay, showing off what the other side is supposedly looking for.
Precisely. Now, where unavailability often enters the picture is through something called strategic interference.
Strategic interference, what's that?
This happens when one person blocks or impedes a mating strategy being pursued by the other person. A really common example is when one person is seeking a long-term, committed relationship, while the other is just looking for a short-term fling.
Ah, the classic mismatch.
Exactly. Men, for instance, might feign long-term interest, talk about the future, deep connection purely to gain short-term sexual access. Conversely, a woman might present herself initially as offering costless sex, seeming very casual, only to later try and convert the relationship into a long-term commitment. This mismatch in intentions is a huge source of conflict.
Definitely sounds familiar, but how does that make the unavailable person attractive?
Well, think about it this way. The very act of chasing someone who is unavailable, maybe because they're playing hard to get, or genuinely have mismatched intentions, or are highly sought after by others, might unconsciously signal higher value. It's like if they're hard to get, our evolved psychology might interpret that as meaning they must be highly desirable, maybe a prime catch in the mating market. Their scarcity increases their perceived worth.
So it's less about a deliberate game someone's playing and more about how our primal instincts interpret these signals, sometimes leading us down a frustrating path.
Exactly. It often operates below conscious awareness. And consider the tactics of derogation in this competition, how people put down rivals. Men are more likely to attack a rival's status, resources, or athletic ability, things women tend to value for long-term security.
He's broke, he's got no ambition, that kind of thing.
Right. Women, however, are more likely to attack a rival's physical attractiveness, maybe saying something like, she has heavy thighs, or their sexual selectivity, perhaps by claiming she slept with the whole football team.
Ouch. Targeting what men value.
Precisely. They're targeting attributes that men, especially those looking for long-term partners, find unappealing. It's interesting, though, because a man seeking a long-term mate is generally turned off by perceived promiscuity. It raises questions about paternity certainty, evolutionarily speaking. Yet, As Mae West famously quipped for short-term liaisons, men like a woman with a past because they hope history will repeat itself. Availability signals different things in different contexts.
That's quite the contrast.
It is. So when we find ourselves drawn to the unavailable in relationships, is it perhaps an unconscious seeking of a higher value mate, someone whose perceived scarcity or the challenge they present signals greater worth? Or is it just an inherent challenge that our evolved psychology finds irresistibly stimulating, even when experience tells us it often leads to conflict and heartbreak? It certainly seems like our deep-seated drives often push us towards the elusive, the difficult to obtain.
Fascinating and kind of sobering too. So let's broaden this out. What does all this mean for our pursuit of, say, success and material wealth? If our brains are wired to crave scarcity, how does that explain why luxury feels so much better than simply enough? It seems like there's this endless striving, doesn't there? A perpetual motion towards more, even when we feel like we have all our basic needs met.
You've absolutely hit on a crucial point. This allure of the unavailable extends far beyond just relationships. It's a massive driver in our economic and social lives too, particularly in that relentless pursuit of wealth, fame, and status. Economists, psychologists, sociologists, they've all noted for a long time that people desire unavailable, scarce, and expensive things, partly because their ostentatious display confers status. Showing off the hard-to-get stuff signals something about you.
The designer handbag, the rare watch.
Exactly. But the appeal of unavailability goes even deeper than just status signaling. Possessing something rare provides a valued sense of self-uniqueness. It makes us feel special, distinctive from the crowd, and that feeling of being unique is a deeply sought-after human need.
I can see that sets you apart.
Right. It also offers an opportunity for downward comparisons.
Yeah.
We can compare ourselves favorably with others who don't possess the item, which can give our self-esteem a nice little boost.
A bit smug, maybe, but effective.
Perhaps. Furthermore, possessing unavailable resources can be a source of power in interactions. Imagine you own a super rare collector's item that several other people desperately want. That immediately gives you leverage, a form of social currency.
Right, they need something from you.
Exactly. So it's not just about what the object is, but what it does for our internal sense of self and our external relationships with others.
That makes sense.
And there's also a strong psychological motivation to justify the cost. If we spend a lot of money or effort acquiring something, we are inherently driven to attribute positive qualities to it. This helps us maintain a sense of fairness and personal equity, basically, reducing buyer's remorse. Our minds subtly convince us, if I paid this much, it must be good. It must be worth it.
To avoid feeling like we made a mistake.
Precisely. It reduces cognitive dissonance. And interestingly, the very barriers to obtaining a highly desired item, the waiting list, the high price, the exclusivity, can physiologically arouse us. This heightened energy, this excitement of the chase, can further increase our desire for the object itself, creating a powerful feedback loop. The struggle makes the prize seem even better.
So the anticipation and difficulty become part of the appeal.
Very much so. But this relentless pursuit, especially in modern society where basic needs are often met, can lead to something called the "is this all there is" syndrome.
Ah, I've heard of that. The feeling after you achieve a big goal.
Exactly. We paradoxically tend to manufacture desires and constantly create new conquests to pursue. This is particularly common among high achievers, powerful leaders, even within seemingly stable long-term relationships where things feel settled. It's that existential question captured in the famous Peggy Lee song, which, interestingly, was based on an essay by Thomas Mann called Disillusionment. It's that profound feeling of malcontentment, even after achieving what society deems the American dream, the big house, the successful career, the perfect family.
Why does that happen? Why isn't reaching the goal satisfying?
Because our hardwired reward mechanisms, the ones designed for survival and perpetual pursuit, prevent us from staying content for too long. We're essentially hunter-gatherers psychologically, but instead of chasing mammoths.
You're chasing the next promotion, the bigger house, more followers.
Precisely. We're chasing manufactured desires for more wealth, higher status, greater glory. The system is designed to keep us moving, keep us striving. Unfortunately, focusing too heavily on these external achievements often leads directly to that feeling of malcontentment. The goalposts just keep moving.
So how do we find contentment then?
Well, Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs offers a useful framework here. It suggests that true holistic contentment comes not from fixating on one area like wealth, but from consistently working on and fulfilling needs across various building blocks of life belonging, esteem, self-actualization, and so on. It implies a more balanced, multifaceted approach to well-being as needed.
A broader definition of success.
Exactly. So it makes you ask, could it be that the insatiable craving for luxury and status isn't truly about the object itself? Could it be about a deeper, perhaps unfulfilled need for uniqueness, superiority, or maybe even just the neurochemical thrill of the chase that we are biologically programmed for? It seems our drive for the inaccessible is a fundamental and complex part of our human experience.
Okay, we've journeyed from evolutionary drives to economics. Now let's pivot to something incredibly modern, but just as powerful, maybe even more so for many people today. How has social media basically engineered a whole new form of desire, turning simple wanting into something that feels almost like an addiction, largely through this lens of FOMO, the fear of missing out?
Yes, FOMO. It's such a potent modern manifestation of these innate desires and the scarcity principle we've been talking about. It leverages technology to create this constant, pervasive sense of what we're not doing, what experiences we're missing out on.
It feels very real, that anxiety.
It does. The term fear of missing out, FOMO, actually emerged around 2004, but it really took off around 2010 and even made it into the Oxford Dictionary in 2013. It's formally defined as a pervasive apprehension that others might be having rewarding experiences from which one's absent. And it's fueled by this compulsive desire to stay continually connected, to constantly check in.
So it's not just knowing others are doing things, it's the fear of missing the reward.
Exactly. It's fundamentally a two-step psychological process. First, there's the perception that you're missing out. And second, that perception triggers a compulsive behavior, usually checking social media endlessly to try and maintain social connections and alleviate that fear. Theoretically, FOMO is often conceptualized using self-determination theory. It's seen as a negative emotional state that stems from unmet needs for social relatedness, for belonging.
So it taps right into that fundamental human need.
Deeply. It's very similar emotionally to the effects of social ostracism, that primal fear of being left out, excluded from the group, which is a powerful survival driver for social creatures like us.
Okay, so it hits a deep nerve. But why does it feel so addictive? Why the compulsive checking?
That comes down to our brain's reward system. The same pathways involved in pleasure and motivation, specifically the mesolimbic dopamine system, are activated by successful social connections and interactions. Social media platforms are incredibly adept at leveraging this. They use principles like reward prediction error encoding and, crucially, variable reward schedules.
Variable reward schedules, like a slot machine.
Exactly like a slot machine. You don't know when the next like, comment, share, or notification will pop up. It's unpredictable. And that intermittent reinforcement is incredibly powerful at hooking you in and keeping you compulsively checking. It strengthens the behavior much more than predictable rewards would.
Wow. So they're basically playing our brain chemistry.
In a way, yes. FOMO isn't just a simple emotion like sadness or anger. It's a complex construct. It reflects your personal predisposition, sure, but it's maintained and amplified by these potent, intermittent social rewards delivered through technology.
And what's the impact of all this on our mental and social health? It sounds like it could be pretty damaging.
It really can be, unfortunately. While social networking sites, or SNS, initially seemed like they might offer a positive outlet, maybe for adolescents with social anxiety to meet social needs more easily.
A way to connect without the face-to-face pressure.
Right. That was the hope, social compensation. But research suggests it often backfires. It can reinforce avoidance of real-world communication and, ironically, end up increasing social anxiety over time, not decreasing it. FOMO definitely drives problematic SNS use. It fosters this constant need for external validation, for reassurance that you're included, that you matter. This can lead to what some researchers call rewarding appraisals of a distorted sense of self, feeling good based on a curated online persona.
Living for the likes.
Pretty much. Cognitively, FOMO often manifests as negative rumination, constantly thinking about what you might be missing, compulsively checking your phone for alerts. This anticipation of a potential reward actually heightens anxiety, creating this really vicious cycle.
And I imagine that constant checking, that comparing yourself to others' highlight reels creates a sort of manufactured scarcity of happiness or success in your own life, right?
Absolutely, it's spot on. Social media presents these distorted perceptions of edited lives of others. You're constantly bombarded with curated perfection, leading to endless upward social comparisons.
Comparing your reality to their highlight reel.
Exactly. And that sets completely unreasonable expectations, which can severely impact self-esteem and is strongly linked to depressive symptoms in some individuals. And here's a real paradox. The round-the-clock nature of online communication, despite being constant, can actually leave young adults feeling lonelier and more disconnected.
More connected but lonelier. How does that work?
Because FOMO can exacerbate pre-existing feelings of loneliness. You feel lonely, so you go online seeking connection. But the superficial nature of many online interactions, combined with the constant comparison and fear of missing out, can actually make you feel worse, more isolated. This drives you back to the platform seeking relief, trapping you in a cycle.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. Some research even suggests that heavy SNS use can activate the amygdala, the brain's fear center, potentially intensifying these negative feelings. And this continuous drive for rewarding social experiences can also make individuals with high FOMO more likely to engage in risky behaviors like experimenting with alcohol or drugs, just to maximize socialization opportunities and feel like they fit in with what they see online.
Wow, so it spills over into real-world behavior too.
Definitely. And the consequences go beyond just mental and social health. FOMO has broader impacts on life. It's strongly linked to sleep disruption, for example. Worrying about missing out before bed or checking your phone in the middle of the night leads to trouble falling asleep and shorter sleep duration. Plus, the blue light from screens messes with melatonin production, disrupting your natural sleep cycles.
I know I'm guilty of the late-night scroll sometimes.
Many of us are. It also significantly impacts academic performance and productivity. Constant notifications, the urge to check, it means repeated task switching. This impairs your attention span, interrupts work or study, and just reduces overall productivity. Research shows rapid task switching leads to poorer learning, more mistakes, and tasks taking longer.
The constant distraction factor.
Huge factor. Then there's physical well-being. High FOMO is associated with less healthy lifestyles, poor eating habits, sometimes linked to envy or social exclusion cues online, and more sedentary behavior from all that screen time. These contribute to things like obesity. It can also lead to vision problems, poor attention that increases accident risk, think walking while texting, and even musculoskeletal pain from hunching over devices.
It really affects the whole person.
It does. And finally, FOMO can lead to decision-making paralysis. You're presented with this overwhelming deluge of options, constantly seeing what others are doing, what possibilities exist. This makes it incredibly hard to commit to anything. There's this constant inclination to keep your options open, always fearing you might miss out on some potentially better, more significant, life-changing experience just around the corner. It creates a never-ending quest for the best option, making it difficult to ever feel satisfied or settled.
That sounds like a recipe for perpetual dissatisfaction.
It really can be. So it begs the question, could it be that in our hyper-connected world, we're trapped in this endless loop of craving, driven by the manufactured scarcity of an idealized online reality that's perpetually just out of reach? Are we just constantly chasing shadows?
Okay, this picture is, well, a bit bleak. Given this deep-seated human tendency to want what's out of reach and all these modern ways it gets amplified, what do ancient wisdom traditions have to say, or modern therapeutic approaches? Is there a path to wanting less, or maybe just wanting differently, a way out of this cycle?
That's the crucial question, isn't it? And thankfully, yes. This is where the wisdom accumulated over centuries meets contemporary understanding, offering really profound insights into our relationship with desire. Let's start with Buddhism. It's famous for the teaching, desire is the root of all suffering. But this statement is very often, and I'd say grossly, misinterpreted.
How so? It sounds pretty straightforward.
It does, but the common interpretation is that it's a call to completely eliminate all desire. Many people actually struggled with Buddhism because they feel this impossible pressure to suppress or destroy every single desire they have, which feels unnatural and, frankly, exhausting.
Right, like you're supposed to become some kind of unfeeling robot.
Exactly. But that's a misguided inference, as scholars would say. The Buddha didn't actually task us with the goal of destroying suffering or desire itself. Instead, the real aim is to gain insight, to understand their causes and their nature. Knowing how desire and suffering work empowers us to form a healthy relationship with them.
A healthy relationship, not elimination.
Right, think about it. Properly utilized desire is absolutely necessary for survival. We need desire to motivate us to eat, to seek shelter, to achieve goals. And practically processed suffering, facing difficulties, is often necessary for personal growth and development. The very idea of struggling desperately to eliminate desire is paradoxically itself a form of wanting, a form of craving. It creates this fighting fire with fire scenario that just prolongs our discontent.
The classic desiring not to desire paradox.
Exactly, it highlights the issue. Also, it's important to understand that suffering in Buddhism, the word is dukkha, is broader than just intense misery. It refers to any sense of dissatisfaction, unease, or not being content with your situation. It's a much wider spectrum.
Okay, so it's more nuanced.
Very nuanced. And Buddhist philosophy, especially the deeper metaphysical ideas, are often considered beyond words. Language is an imperfect tool, so apparent contradictions in texts don't necessarily invalidate each other. Different schools offer different paths towards a truth that can't be perfectly captured by language, but a really crucial distinction they do make is between two kinds of desire, tanha and chanda.
Tanha and chanda, okay.
Tanha is usually translated as craving. This is the unskillful desire, the one that arises from ignorance and delusion, and this is the type that causes suffering. It refers to those strong, grasping, unwholesome desires that take control of the mind and lead to attachment and inevitable dissatisfaction when things change or don't go our way.
Okay, so that's the problematic kind. What's chanda?
Chanda is different. It's often translated as wise desire or intention or motivation. This is the skillful, intelligent desire that arises from wisdom and clear understanding. And far from being something to eliminate, chanda is considered absolutely fundamental to making progress on spiritual paths, like the Buddhist Eightfold Path.
So you need desire to progress.
You need skillful desire. Examples of chanda would be the desire for unskillful qualities not to arise in your mind, the desire to abandon negative habits you already have, or the desire for positive, skillful qualities to arise and be maintained. Even enlightened beings, like the Buddha himself, are said to operate from chanda. For instance, the Buddha is compassionately desiring to teach the Dharma, to share his insights for the welfare of others. That's a prime example of chanda, of skillful, positive motivation.
That's a huge distinction. It's not about killing desire, but transforming it.
Precisely. The goal isn't suppression, it's insight. Understanding the deep connection between unskillful desire, tanha, and suffering allows us to lessen the self-inflicted, unnecessary suffering we often create for ourselves. It's about seeing the problematic nature of wanting to eliminate everything, and instead cultivating skillful desires, chanda, that lead towards greater wisdom, satisfaction, and genuine well-being.
Okay, that reframes it completely. It's not about absence of desire, but about which desires we choose to cultivate. How does modern therapy or philosophy connect with this? Does it echo these ideas?
It aligns remarkably well, actually. In modern philosophy, the concept of well-being is central. It describes what is non-instrumentally or ultimately good for a person. Basically, how well someone's life is going for them.
Beyond just fleeting happiness.
Exactly. It's a broader concept, a prudential value, acknowledging things that are intrinsically good or bad for us. Philosophers have various theories about what constitutes this good life. One early view, prudential hedonism, suggested only pleasure makes life better, only pain makes it worse. But this is largely seen as a dead end now.
Why is that? Sounds simple.
Because humans clearly choose things that aren't immediately pleasurable all the time. Think about watching a sad movie, attending a difficult but meaningful event like a funeral, training hard for a marathon, or even choosing a demanding career over an easy life. We do these things to fulfill other deeper desires or values, not just for raw pleasure.
Right. We value meaning, challenge, connection.
Exactly. So a more nuanced view is preference hedonism. This suggests a life goes better if it contains more experiences of the kind one desires, whether they are purely pleasurable or not. If your preference is for, say, altruism, then fulfilling that desire improves your well-being, even if it involves hard work instead of a Bahamas vacation. Then there's desire satisfaction theory, which simply posits that your life goes best to the extent that your desires are fulfilled. But this gets complicated fast. Should we prioritize fleeting desires over long-term goals? Like, should the desire to skip piano practice outweigh the long-term desire to become a skilled pianist? And what about desires fulfilled only after you're dead, like leaving a legacy?
Yeah, that gets tricky.
It does. So, contrasting with these subjective views, there's the objective list theory. This proposes that there are certain things that are objectively good for everyone to have or experience, regardless of whether they personally desire them at any given moment.
Like what kind of things?
Things like knowledge, genuine friendship, physical safety, finding meaning in life, acting morally, developing your abilities, appreciating true beauty. The idea is these things are intrinsically good for human flourishing, whether you happen to want them right now or not.
Okay, so different philosophical takes on what makes a life good. How does therapy fit in?
Modern therapeutic approaches, especially ones like cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, which is often used for issues like FOMO, align very well with this discerning approach to desire, particularly the Buddhist distinction. CBT helps individuals identify and challenge distorted thought patterns, cognitions, and the underlying anxieties that fuel problematic behaviors. It helps people recognize and manage those unskillful desires or cravings, like the compulsive need to check social media driven by FOMO. For instance, there's a specific model called FOMO reduction, FOMO-R. It focuses on building resilience by educating people about how social media algorithms work, challenging their distorted comparisons, and offering alternative, healthier ways to connect and meet their social needs.
So it's about managing the desire, not just trying to willpower your way through it.
Exactly. The goal is to foster a healthy relationship with desire, understanding its roots and impacts, rather than engaging in a futile struggle against it. It's about empowering individuals to make wiser choices about which desires to pursue and how, leading to more sustainable satisfaction and well-being.
So it seems both ancient wisdom and modern psychology point towards this idea of discernment, right? Learning to distinguish between the cravings that trap us in suffering, our tanha, and the wise intentions that actually serve our well-being, our chanda.
That seems to be the key insight.
And finding contentment, not necessarily in getting everything we want, but in cultivating a mind that understands its own workings, that can navigate desire wisely.
A mind that finds peace amidst the inevitable ebb and flow of desire, rather than being constantly swept away by it.
Okay, this has been incredibly insightful, but now here's the curveball. We've spent all this time exploring why we're so intensely driven by desire, why we constantly want what we can't have. But what happens when we actually get what we want? Why does sometimes achieving that goal, getting that thing, fulfilling that desire, why does it sometimes completely ruin everything, or at least feel deeply anticlimactic? It's almost a cruel trick of the mind.
Ah, yes, the paradox of fulfillment. This is the truly ironic truth about desire, isn't it?
Yeah.
Its very intensity can end up sabotaging its own fulfillment.
Yeah.
And even when we do get what we want, the satisfaction is often surprisingly fleeting. There's a concept sometimes referred to as the wanting it tax.
A wanting it tax. What's that?
The basic idea is, the more intensely you want something, the harder it often becomes to acquire it, or the more you end up paying for it, and not just in money, but in emotional energy, stress, maybe even compromised values. Herb Cohen, who wrote You Can Negotiate Anything, told this great story about a couple in an antique store. They saw a clock they absolutely fell in love with and decided they had to have it. They planned to haggle.
Okay.
But the store owner overheard the wife telling her husband very emphatically, I just have to have that clock. Their fervent, openly expressed desire completely undermined their negotiating position.
They lost all their leverage.
Completely. They couldn't haggle the price down at all because the owner knew how badly they wanted it. They ended up paying the full asking price. They paid the wanting it tax, a literal monetary cost directly resulting from their overwhelming desire.
Wow. So showing your cards costs you.
Often, yes. This idea is also beautifully captured in that old proverb, the bird of paradise alights itself upon the hand that does not grasp. It speaks to the power of detachment, of not clinging too tightly.
That's so true. It really resonates. It's like the moment you desperately need something to happen, a job interview to go well, a date to it immediately feels harder to achieve. That intensity backfires.
You've hit on it perfectly. You've likely experienced this with people too, right? Someone who tries too hard.
Oh, definitely.
Someone who's overly expressive, constantly fishing for compliments, or just exudes this palpable sense of neediness. We often subconsciously keep people like that at a distance. Our instincts make us protective of our own time and emotional energy. We tend to keep neediness at a distance, almost as a form of self-preservation or resource management.
Yeah, it can feel draining to be around.
Exactly. Or consider giving a big presentation. If you desperately want it to go perfectly, you might overexpress yourself, rush your words, get ahead of your slides. That intense wanting can actually make your performance less appealing, less natural, less effective. As that fictional but wise character Don Draper supposedly advised, he who is least attached to the outcome keeps the power. There's truth in that. The key is often to relax into it, to maybe even gently push things away mentally rather than desperately clinging.
Less grasping, more allowing.
Something like that. And this leads us directly to the second part of the paradox, the fleeting nature of contentment. Even when we overcome the wanting it tax and actually achieve the goal, the satisfaction is often short-lived. Why? Because our biology is fundamentally designed for perpetual motion, not for static satisfaction. Survival, in a deep biological sense, is often described as this perpetual cycle of being driven to fulfill a desire or need, and then being rewarded by the contentment that follows. That reward reinforces the behavior.
The dopamine hit after achieving something?
Exactly. But here's the critical twist. Our reward mechanisms permeate our biology to make sure that we never stay content for too long. That feeling of satisfaction is designed to fade.
Designed to fade? Why?
Because that constant push, that underlying dissatisfaction returning, is what keeps us going. It drives us to seek the next achievement, overcome the next challenge, ensure our ongoing survival and adaptation. It means the enough threshold is constantly shifting. The contentment is temporary, paving the way for the next desire to emerge and motivate us.
So evolution doesn't want us resting on our laurels.
Pretty much. This biological hardwiring directly explains why people who achieve the American dream or reach other major life goals can still experience that profound "is this all there is" syndrome we talked about earlier. The chase itself, the striving, often holds more neurochemical allure than the actual attainment because our entire system is designed to seek the next conquest, the next challenge. The state of having is less motivating, biologically, than the state of pursuing.
Wow. So, if true, lasting contentment is biologically ephemeral, and the very intensity of our desire can undermine its fulfillment, are we then kind of trapped? Trapped in this perpetual loop of chasing a receding horizon, maybe destined to always be wanting more even after we've supposedly won?
It's a profound and somewhat unsettling question, isn't it? It really challenges our conventional notions of happiness and what it means to live a satisfying life. It suggests the answer might not lie in finally getting everything we want.
We have peeled back so many layers today. I mean, from the primal drives that make us covet the scarce to the engineered cravings of our digital age, and even diving into timeless wisdom on how to live with desire, it's become incredibly clear that our relationship with wanting is far more intricate and definitely more paradoxical than we often realize.
Indeed. It's quite a journey we've taken. We've seen how deeply ingrained desire is in our psychology, thinking about those evolutionary drives, the powerful allure of scarcity, right through to the manufactured cravings fueled by modern consumerism and social media. And importantly, how even ancient spiritual wisdom makes that critical distinction between the desires that can actually empower us and lead to well-being and those that entrap us in cycles of suffering.
Yeah, that Tana versus Chanda distinction feels really key.
It really does. This whole exploration, it raises a really important question for you listening right now. If the very act of intensely wanting something can make it harder to obtain or maybe diminish its value once you actually get it, then perhaps the ultimate freedom isn't really found in finally getting everything you want. Maybe it's found in learning to want differently, or even sometimes learning how to not want at all.
Wanting differently, or not wanting. That's a big shift in perspective.
It is. So consider this as we wrap up. Is true well-being maybe not about satisfying every single craving that pops into your head? Is it perhaps more about cultivating a mind that can find peace, find equanimity amidst the natural ebb and flow of desire? What will you choose to chase? And perhaps more importantly, what will you choose to allow to simply alight upon your open, ungrasping hand?
That's a powerful thought to end on. And that's all the time we have for this deep dive. We really hope this exploration has given you some new insights, maybe some aha moments into the powerful and often paradoxical nature of human desire. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey to become more well-informed. If you found this deep dive thought-provoking, maybe share it with someone else who loves to unravel the mysteries of the mind. Until next time, keep digging, keep questioning, and stay curious.